I just wish, I'm sure all of you do too, wish we had a whole day or a whole weekend or a whole week for this panel. Very moving to hear your stories and to be with you. Thank you. With our 10 minutes remaining, I'm going to pose a couple of questions to the panel, and please, anybody who feels like responding, please do. Or if you have anything to share at all, please do. What is our own complicity in the consciousness that resulted in the bomb? Number one. Number two, how do we move through despair and paralysis to engage the issues? Number three, how do we find our way into right relationship and right action? And number four, what ceremonies will heal the land and our communities?
I'd like to speak.
Are you guys okay with that? Should we open it up to the audience? We've only got 5 minutes.
I'll be there.
You'll be brief?
Yeah, I'll be there.
What I want to say, I've said at another circle, and my uncle was Stanislas Ulam, the mother of the H-bomb, and I just want to communicate that I saw him shortly before he died, and he was very worried about what he had participated in doing. So I truly believe, I'm genetically responsible for this, and we all are, and I truly believe that perhaps a way is to hold these people, as it's been said, to hold these people deep in our heart and understand that it's a terrible, terrible burden for them as well.
Thank you, Jen. I also learned last week that my great-grandfather was involved in the Manhattan Project, and I know several other people who are finding out all kinds of things about their relatives being involved. So we each have a role to play in this. Just by being Americans, we all have a role to play. Would any of you care to address this particular topic? Are you ready to speak? Okay.
This is a no-brainer for me because it speaks to exactly who I am and what I'm creating in the world, and I see that what we create on the inside is what manifests on the outside. So I see the creation of a transformation in myself as the seed for a transformation on the outside. So as far as the question, what is our own complicity in the bomb? That's my complicity, is my own consciousness. So I'll take care of that, and hopefully good things will happen.
Many people now, with the boom of the Occupy movement, have been saying, what are we doing as activists? Or then the people in the spiritual world kind of get recluse into their own world to get that inner peace and broadcast that. But I think that we are at a point that we need to put that outer revolution and put it in contact with the inner revolution. What that means is that we need that the spiritual people become active and the activists become spiritual, so that we can have the total revolution of the human spirit. So any single human being on the planet, there's no pretext for building and work on our orchards and having those plum pits and growing local and fresh and organic food. Anyone can plug into that chain, and at the same time, anyone can spend time in receptive silence. I grew up in a secular environment, and the scientific community is pretty atheist in that point. And I believe that many of us in that part are humanists in that way. So any person can spend time in silence, and it really doesn't matter if coming from a Buddhist or from a Christian or from Native American or from secular perspective, it really doesn't matter. And that's why I love how we're coming together in silence as family.
Thank you.
So complicity, where I go with that question has to do with the interconnected web of life, and as Thich Nhat Hanh calls it, interbeing. That there's really no place where I leave off and you begin, that we're completely and totally interdependent. And so what affects me affects you, and it goes on, and that's the beauty of nature. So blaming and arguing never help us. It only creates a wider gap between us. And really, as we've heard over and over, only understanding, trust, and love can help us change and grow. So it feels like it's time to set aside a lot of what got us here, the differences and the blame, and move forward creatively with a new vision. Let's birth a new vision for life, you know? What a great opportunity. What a beautiful challenge. Human beings have so much potential if we can work together. So let's do that. And can I take a minute to read these? I brought with me, is that okay? I was reviewing Joanna Macy this morning and her nuclear guardianship teachings. And I came across this. I think it bears reading. I got it. It's an ethic of nuclear guardianship, values to guide decision-making on the management of radioactive materials. So there's 10 points. 1, each generation shall endeavor to preserve the foundations of life and well-being for those who come after, to produce and abandon substances that damage following generations is morally unacceptable. 2, given the extreme toxicity and longevity of radioactive materials, their production must cease. The development of safe, renewable energy sources and nonviolent means of conflict resolution is essential to the health and survival of life on Earth. Radioactive materials are not to be regarded as an economic or military resource. 3, we accept responsibility for the nuclear materials produced in our lifetimes and those left in our safekeeping. 4, future generations have the right to know about the nuclear legacy bequeathed to them and to protect themselves from it. 5, future generations have the right to monitor and repair containers and to apply such technologies as may be developed to protect the biosphere more effectively. Deep burial of radioactive materials precludes these possibilities and risks uncontrollable contamination to life support systems. 6, transport of radioactive materials with its inevitable risks of accidents and spills should be undertaken only when conditions at the current site pose a greater ecological hazard than transportation. 7, research and development of technologies for the least hazardous long-term treatment and placement of nuclear materials should receive high priority in funding and public attention. 8, education of the public about the character, source, and containment of radioactive materials is essential for the health of present and future generations. This education should promote understanding of our relationship to the Earth and to time. 9, the formation of policies governing the management of radioactive materials requires full participation of the public. Free circulation of information and open communication are indispensable for the self-protection of present and future generations. 10. The vigilance necessary for ongoing containment of radioactive materials requires a moral commitment. This commitment is within our capacity and can be developed and sustained by drawing on the cultural and spiritual resources of our collective human heritage.
Thank you, Cynthia. Yes, we've run out of time, but we're going to have one last comment by John. You speak, please. And then I think after you speak, we'll end with just 60 seconds of silence. Okay?
Well, I heard the word despair mentioned and the way forward, and that reminded me that your question was about that horrible four-letter word, hope. So I wanted to say a word about that, and maybe, it's something good to think about. Where do you find hope in the face of what we're talking about? And Dr. King at the end of his life was really hopeless and suicidal, and for the first time in his life started speaking about hope. And then a couple weeks before he was killed, he said, I figured the definition of hope. Hope is the final refusal to give up. Very important to think about that. Daniel Berrigan was asked about this when I was young, and he said, and I never forgot it, the only way to be hopeful is to do hopeful things. That was very helpful. Thomas Merton wrote this incredible letter. He said, as people of peace, do not place your hope in results, which is what you want. We're going to get rid of nukes. We're going to have 10,000 people at the Nuke Free Now conference. Well, you're doomed then. Then you're the same mindset of the Pentagon. Place your hope in the God of peace and do the good because it's good. Speak the truth because it's truthful. That's a very profound spiritual teaching. And then I just wanted to end. So I guess what I'm saying, the way forward is more conferences like this, more organizing, public events at Los Alamos to keep calling for the abolition of nuclear weapons. Is really important. I put my energies into the grassroots movement building, not electoral politics or so many other things, church politics, for example, but in movement building. And I want to end with what our friend Howard Zinn was in Santa Fe shortly before he died, the author of People's History of the United States. And he said this incredible thing. I spent my whole life studying, you all know Howard Zinn, the movements of social change. And I finally, after 40 years, realized they have one thing in common. Yeah? The abolitionists, the suffragists, those uppity women, the labor movement, this is the way it was, the civil rights movement, the anti-Vietnam War movement, the beginning of the environmental movement, they were all I know this now, from the beginning, the middle, right to the very end, hopeless, hopeless, hopeless. I said, thanks a lot, Howard. That's really helpful. And then there was a breakthrough of hope in every movement, and I asked myself as a historian, why? And I figured out the answer. Because in every movement of social change in our own history, the change happened because every single day, ordinary people did something for the struggle for justice and peace, and they didn't give up, even though they knew they were not going to live to see the change happen. Mm-hmm. They did it because it was right, and then the movement, the nonviolent movements, grows and becomes contagious. So the abolition of nuclear weapons is going to happen, because we're going to keep at it.
So at this moment, we'd like to call anyone who is involved in the current hunger strike or who has done hunger striking in the past to come up front. And we could offer prayer support for them as they continue and along with our moment of silence. So please come forward.
Anybody who has struck for one day.
Alec, you've got a prayer. Okay, this will be the end of our panel today. Thank you. Thank you. And everybody, why don't we hold hands? Everybody hold hands? Is that okay?
This is a prayer that has to do with bringing the desire for balance into our hearts. And it has to do with very much with Los Alamos and the desire for domination and control that exists in that place. So as it is in the macro, so it is in the micro. In the hustle and bustle of today and tomorrow and for the rest of our lives, in the necessity of push and drive, may we never let go of our awareness of receiving and loving. That we keep our awareness centered on the process and not the result. That we do all that we do with nurturing compassion and awareness of the Great Mother, Gaia, and all feminine principles guiding us and informing all our actions. May the light of unconditional love shine from our hearts and help to create the balance in our hearts and on this planet that we all seek to achieve.